Hello, Jackets fans. Welcome to Boom and Gloom, a Columbus Blue Jackets fan podcast where I discuss the boom, the good, and the gloom, the bad, of CBJ hockey. I'm Anthony, but you may know me as Whaler Jacket on various social media platforms. And as I always say, I am Ohio's longest suffering hockey fan. I am 48 years old, and only once in my life have I ever seen my favorite NHL team advance to the second round of the playoffs. Started watching NHL hockey as a Whalers fan around the age of 9. So if you can do the math, that's about 40 years. I have seen my favorite team advance past the first round once in 40 years. That is quite pathetic. It just makes me wonder, what all those other fan bases feel. The ones who have experienced a lot of playoff success. It must be wonderful. Kind of like what it was for the Jackets fans in 2019 when the Jackets swept the Lightning. They must have that feeling a lot. And we have not. But things have been looking up for this team, and I'm very excited for the future. For the near future, I should say. The next several years should be incredibly exciting ones for the team and its fans. Now, I'm back with you. I know it's been a while. I've been MIA for, I think, about a month now, unintentionally. I've been wanting to do another episode, but life just keeps getting in the way. We got hit with sicknesses, and then, my son had surgery, work-related stuff, just crazy busy. And then of course, there was the Four Nations tournament, the break from the NHL. So I haven't had much of an opportunity to record a new episode, but I am very excited to be back with you today. With that, let's get into it. Starting off, of course, with the Stadium Series game last night against the Detroit Red Wings at Ohio Stadium, the Shoe. This was the culmination of years of effort. And let me say, it took way too long for this game to happen. But it finally happened. I was there, and I want to tell you all about, the boom and gloom. The boom and gloom from that game. So let's start off with the boom, the good stuff, okay? There was a lot of good that came from last night's game. First of all, the win. When the Red Wings tied it up with about 3 minutes left in the first period, I thought, this is not going to end well. The Wings, up until that point, had outshot the Jackets by some ridiculous amount. I can't remember how many shots the Jackets had at that point. But Elvis Merzlikins, he stood on his head. Stood on his head last night. 43 saves outside in freezing cold weather against a desperate Red Wings team fighting for the same precious playoff spot or standings points, I guess I should say. And he just played a fantastic game. But I did think, I really thought that third goal, that tying goal, was ultimately going to be the final string unraveling. But I was wrong. Pleasantly incorrect. Justin Danforth scores and the Jackets take the lead before Adam Fantilli put home an empty netter to seal it. Now, my son joked. He joked that only the Jackets could miss 2 empty net goals as closely as they did. But thankfully, the third try was successful and the game was sealed. I'm curious about everyone else's thoughts on that Danforth goal. If you watched All right, Danforth appeared to get away with a high stick. Now, if I'm being honest, in my opinion, it was a high stick, and it should have been called. I will totally admit that. But I will also say, do you know how many times the Jackets have been screwed over by bad calls over the years? If it was an official stat, it would have to be a record. Have to be. And the Red Wings, you know what? They've had their time. They've all those years of dominance and multiple Stanley Cups. It was time, okay? It was time for the Jackets at home in front of almost 100,000 people to have a little luck when it comes to a missed call. Getting a win, our fourth in a row, by the way, and second in a row against Detroit, when we are in the thick of the playoff race, was amazing and so satisfying. The atmosphere, okay? The NHL, the Jackets, Ohio State, they all did an absolutely fantastic job putting this thing together. It was an event. I'm not sure if they do this anymore because I don't pay for a TV service anymore. But I remember when networks, they wanted to hype up an episode for a TV show, and they would refer to it as a television event. Like, next Thursday, a television event. Not a show, an event. Well, this was not just a game. It was an event. And it was pulled off spectacularly. From the field setup and the decor to the presence of the Ohio State band, the concert, and even the national anthem, which my wife agrees was like the best in-person anthem experience we have ever seen. It just all came together so well. And I have to try to remember the number here, but I think it was 94,741 people attended that game to watch a hockey game played in a football stadium. The atmosphere, as Jeff Rimmer would say, was electric. And this was a statement event, okay? Since year one of the Jackets' existence, they truly have not been given the respect that most other teams receive. And I don't want to say it's warranted, but I understand why in some ways. I mean, they're a small market team, which has obviously had very little on-ice success in their history. Their logos and their jerseys, they don't necessarily stand out, and they don't have a spot among the highest money generators around the NHL. Like, casual fans are not looking to buy Blue Jackets gear. They prefer to get some of the bigger name or well-known bigger market stuff. I get that. They have had only one top scorer in their history, so it's not like an Alex Ovechkin in Washington. Everybody knows Ovechkin, so everybody knows the Capitals. So nothing has really propelled them to prominence among casual fans. They're kind of like the team that everyone outside of Ohio forgets about. But not last night. Last night was different. Last night was a statement. We filled one of the largest stadiums in the world. And granted, okay, there were plenty of Detroit fans there, but there were more Jackets fans that I saw with just my eye. And we filled that stadium. We showed the hockey world that, yeah, we may be a small market team, but we are passionate, knowledgeable fans who cheer for a darn good hockey team. And our team made us proud last night. My fellow fans made me proud, just by showing up and making it loud and cheering. We showed the hockey world that Columbus is a hockey town. Okay, it proved that Columbus is not just an Ohio State town anymore. Jackets hockey is becoming more and more prominent in the city, and you can see that everywhere. All the way down to youth hockey, all the teams and events that they have at local arenas. This was an event to be sure. And my brother and sister actually came out from New England just to attend this game with me. And I have a funny story about that. My sister is a diehard Rangers fan. We arrived at the stadium, and we were making our way to our seats, which were nosebleed seats, way up on one corner of the horseshoe. And as we're passing through the corridor that leads outside to our seats, my sister suddenly has like a mild freak out. Like I can see her, her eyes widen. And she asks us if any of us noticed anything about who we just walked by. And nobody knew what she was talking about. We're like, what are you talking about? She said we walked right past a guy who looked a lot like Mark Messier. Now, my brother and I know exactly what Mark Messier looks like. Okay, like our family, my brother and I, we consider like the Rangers our second favorite teams. At least I think my brother does. I'm not sure, but I do. Rangers are my second favorite. If I had to pick a second favorite, if I'm not cheering for the Blue Jackets, I'm cheering for the Rangers. And my parents, diehard Rangers fans. So we all know who Mark Messier is. But neither of us noticed. We didn't think anything of it. My sister didn't think anything of it. Why would Mark Messier be in the nosebleed section of a hockey game in Ohio? Later in the evening, my sister's boyfriend texts her and says, "Did you know Mark Messier is in the building tonight? Did you know that Mark Messier is there tonight?" So she looked him up on Instagram and saw a post of his, and he was there to do the ESPN broadcast, I guess. And my sister noticed the pants he was wearing, and she said, "The guy I saw was wearing those same pants." So she is 90% sure that we walked right past Mark Messier. And she is kind of upset because she's a huge fan and she would have loved to say hello to him. And heck, I would have loved to say hello to him. I would have loved to have gotten a picture of him. And actually, my sister, one time, she somehow managed to run into him at a grocery store in North Haven, Connecticut, of all places. So it's fun to think that one of the NHL's greatest players of all time, like a legend to the game, was in the top nosebleed seats at Ohio Stadium and went largely unnoticed by the people around him. All right, back to the good stuff about the game. The Gaudreaus. The Gaudreaus tributes, I should say, were awesome. Okay, from the players wearing Johnny-inspired outfits at the pep rally, to the family leading the team to the stadium, to the video tribute they had. It was all well done. It was a nice touch. And there were even a few Johnny hockey chants as well. Elvis Merzlikins said that afterwards, he said that Johnny helped them win that game tonight. So that was nice. And one more thing, the jerseys. Both teams' jerseys were very well done, and I say that as somebody who has never really liked the Red Wings or their jerseys. But I'm saying that here. They were both very well done. But of course, I'm going to focus on the Jackets one. I saw hundreds of them worn by fans. And when you figure that each one sells for anywhere from $200 to $400, the team has made a pretty penny on those sales. They're obviously very popular. I personally love them. There's been talk amongst fans about adopting them to be used as the team's primary jerseys, with some minor tweaks, of course. I mean, the numbers would have to shrink a little bit, I think. The logo, I think that would need to shrink a bit as well. I think it's kind of too big on the front of the jersey. But I also think it kind of needs a little extra oomph. It just doesn't scream NHL hockey logo to me. I might even prefer the current Jackets third logo, which has a cannon, but it actually says Columbus Blue Jackets on it. I think for the cannon to become the primary logo and be used as the primary jersey, I think it needs to be more iconic, for lack of a better term. Our current logo, while I admit it doesn't necessarily scream NHL hockey team, it is iconic. It has the star, the Ohio flag, and everyone knows that it means Blue Jackets hockey. That cannon that was on the Stadium Series jersey, it's just a cannon to me. Incorporate a hockey stick in it somewhere, somehow, and or make it more indicative of the city it represents. Like the current logo has the C that the flag forms, or the star that represents the capital. Do something like that, something that makes it more iconic, more relatable to Columbus, or the Jackets in general. But again, I'm just nitpicking. I mean, I love the jerseys. The colors, the striping, it was great. And I hope they will use it again sometime. Like, I've heard that other teams, after a Stadium Series, have used it on their home ice a time or two. But I'm not sure about that. All right, so even though the game was amazing, and I had lots of good things to say about it, there was some bad stuff. So darn cold. We brought blankets. I wore 3 pairs of socks. We had hand warmers that didn't really work well. We had neck gaiters. We had winter hats. We had gloves. We had thick winter coats. And it was still so darn cold. My wife spent a lot of time in the women's restroom just warming up, like not even needing to use the restroom, just using it as an area to get warm. And apparently there were a lot of other women in there doing the exact same thing, just staying in there to stay warm. My toes were so cold that it was like going back and forth between hardly feeling them and them being very painful. When I walked, I was stumbling. Like, I actually felt off balance because I couldn't feel my toes. It was hard to walk. That's how cold it was. Can't control the weather, though. And I remember when they announced the Stadium Series game would be March 1st, I thought to myself, wow, they are really pushing their luck here, because it could have been 65, 70 degrees on March 1st in Ohio. And what happened? It was the exact opposite. It was so cold. All right, what else? No boomer. Okay. If you're listening to this, I assume you know who Boomer is, so I'm not going to go into that. This would have been, in my opinion, the team's perfect opportunity to bring back Boomer. And I was actually quite surprised he didn't make an appearance. I'm pretty sure I remember Aaron Portzline or somebody else prominent with the Blue Jackets mentioning that we have not seen the last of Boomer. So I was really expecting him to be here today, or last night. There was even a fan of the game, like they announced a fan of the game and showed him on screen. And it was some kid dressed up in a Boomer costume. How awesome would it have been for him, for Boomer to come out at that moment when that was announced and greet that kid and appear on the Jumbotron? Oh my gosh, I can only imagine the applause that would have received. Such a missed opportunity there. Other stuff. All right, the bathroom situation was awful. And I guess maybe it's because the stadium is outdated and there's just the way it's set up. There's not a lot of them. I don't know. This was only my second ever trip to Ohio Stadium. And I don't even remember the first one. It was back in college to see my wife's sister running a track event. So it's been, 25 years at least. More than that. But there were super long lines for the restroom. More than normal Blue Jackets games. Someone mentioned that they spent half a period, like they missed half of a period. They got up at the end of a period and then missed half of the next period just to stand in line to pee. I really had to go at the end of the second period, but I waited because I knew it would be jam-packed. So I waited until the third. Then I waited a little longer, and I held it until halfway through the third period. And I figured, surely there wouldn't be a line to wait at the restroom halfway through the third. Most people would be back at their seats. This would be the perfect time to go. I was wrong. I ended up waiting in line, using the restroom, and then returning with about 5 minutes to go in the game. So restroom lines were certainly rough. And another bad thing, I hate to say it, but it was the price. Man, I paid $109. $109 for a nosebleed seat way up high on a corner. I mean, we couldn't even see the Jumbotron because we were almost against a concrete wall next to us. So I think $109, that is an outrageous amount to pay for the seats that we got. This event was supposed to help grow the game, so I think it should have been made a little more affordable. Granted, they practically sold out the stadium, so you could easily argue that I should shut up because why should the cost be cheaper if everyone was still willing to pay and attend? But still, that was a lot of money to shell out to see a game and freeze my butt off. And lastly, the view, all right? Everyone knows going into it that seeing a hockey game set up on a rink in the middle of a football field is not going to provide you with the optimal viewing experience. All right? It's not about that. It's all about the atmosphere. All about the environment. I get that. And maybe it's my old age showing, but I had a difficult time following the puck at times. I mean, it was a tiny speck from where we were seated. But again, okay, you don't go to a Stadium Series game to get a prime hockey viewing experience. You go for the all-around experience. I understand that. But it was difficult to follow. And again, our seats were on a corner up high. very high. There was a wall directly to our left, so we could not see the Jumbotron, the giant screen or whatever it's called, that sits behind the student section of the stadium. All right, last notes about the game. Okay, these are not like good or bad. These are just some things I wanted to point out. The Zambonis were interesting. Much smaller than regular Zambonis. So I posted this on Blue Sky because I had no idea. This is my first ever experience of seeing ice resurfacers in a situation like this. So I asked about this. I'm like, why are these things so small? And I learned that it's because normal size Zambonis would be too heavy and would crack the ice at an outdoor event like this. So there you have it. Mini Zambonis. They were, in the words of some other people, cute. When we arrived, there was a significant leak, like water coming from the pipes high above in the rafters, or whatever you want to call them, inside the main concourse by section, I think it was 26. And the water was dripping down from way up high, and a cart was placed underneath just to deter people from walking right through the water, like right through the dripping water. And when I used the restroom in the third period, all the sinks, every one of them, were covered in plastic, like plastic sheeting, unable to be used. So that sucks. For anybody doing more than just peeing, that really sucks. But it made me wonder. I've heard in the past that the main reason the Jackets had yet to have an outdoor game at the Horseshoe was because the piping system was not winterized. So it makes me wonder, is this evidence of that? Were the pipes leaking and the sinks taped off because of some kind of problem that wouldn't happen in the spring, summer, or fall? Is it because it was not winterized? I can't answer that question, but it makes me wonder. And finally, what happened after the second Blue Jackets goal? Why did the cannon not go off? Malfunction, I assume. But my sister was sitting there waiting with her phone ready to take a picture of that or a video of that, and it never went off. So we were pleased when it returned for goal number 3. So that wraps up my Stadium Series commentary. Before I leave you today, there are several other notes, Blue Jackets notes, that I want to talk about. The NHL trade deadline is Friday, and I am just as unclear as to what the Jackets are going to do now as I was 2 months ago. I just don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what's going to happen. Don Waddell says he wants to bring in some help. But if that happens, who do you take out of the lineup? Like, let's just assume he's going after one player. I mean, gosh, I can't even imagine him going after more than one player. But let's say he's going after one player. Right now, Joe LeBate is in the lineup. Sillinger comes back in. LeBate leaves the lineup. Monahan comes back in. Putia leaves the lineup. Then it gets really murky. Because if you trade for a new forward, assuming one of our regular lineup players doesn't go back the other way, then who comes out? Who comes out of this lineup? And then, what if Chinnikov miraculously returns? I just don't know. Who comes out of this lineup? That's 2 players right there currently playing that you have to take out. I can't remember a time when such a lineup decision was so difficult, to be honest. I mean, in team history, there's something special about this team. Okay, I know that sounds corny, but there is. And I just don't want any of those forwards to come out of the lineup right now. And as for defense, I'm still not sold on Provorov, okay? I know there's talk about him staying, but I would still like to trade him for an asset. like a draft pick. And I'm not saying he has played poorly, okay? Not at all. But I think Waddell is going to want to upgrade his defensive pairings. And you can't do that if you re-sign or retain every single defenseman that is currently on your roster. Something has to give. So my vote would be to trade Provorov. Get some assets for him and open up a spot for an even bigger move this summer. And Waddell has said that Provorov, or he considers Provorov to be their best shutdown defenseman. So I'm not sure. With that statement, him saying that, is he even going to want to trade him? But again, something has to give. Especially with Goodbranson possibly returning soon. Something has to give. And I admit that I wish Damon Severson would be traded. And I'm not saying he's a bad person or even a bad player, but I just think the Jackets could do better than him. But his darn Yarmo contract is going to be a weight around their necks for 6 more seasons unless Don Waddell can work a miracle. And who knows if that could happen. But I guess we will know more by Friday. As you probably know, I'm a teacher, and that is, I admit, that is the one day of the school year where I just never get much work done. I am constantly checking my phone and my computer for the trade updates. Don't tell my principal. Now, I mentioned Sillinger is out, and I'm not sure what is going on with him. I didn't see the injury. I didn't watch that game, and I never looked back to see the highlights. But I do know that Boone Jenner is back, and it is so nice to see him on the ice again. He has 7 assists in his first 4 games back, which if I heard correctly, is a team record for most assists to start a season. And granted, he is starting his season very, very late. But it's better than not starting at all, right? It is so awesome to have his leadership, his physicality, his ability to win faceoffs, all that back in the lineup. And I sure hope he keeps up the pace. Having him in the lineup just it's been a huge asset, especially with Sillinger out. Now let's talk about Zach Werenski for a minute. Now, I haven't recorded a podcast since before the Four Nations tournament. Who led the tournament in scoring? Yes, Zach Werenski. He has solidified himself as a true Norris candidate, even though that tournament didn't have league games. I think it solidified him as a Norris candidate and as an elite defenseman in this league. I think if people were on the fence calling or considering him an elite defenseman, I don't think they're on the fence anymore. He belongs in the top tier of defensemen in the league. Currently, he has 18 goals, 46 assists. That's 64 points. And I think he has a legit chance to smash Panarin's record for most points in a season by a Blue Jacket. And you know who has a chance as well? Kirill Marchenko. He has 24 goals, 36 assists. That's 60 points. Saying he is having a breakout season is an understatement. I just love having him and Z on this team. Kirill's personality is infectious. Did you guys see the interview he did? He was actually serving as Voronkov's translator. They're both hilarious. Voronkov and Marchenko are both hilarious, but Marchenko especially because he can speak English better, so you kind of know what he's saying. But he's such a likable guy, and it's not just him. All right, I've said it before. I just love this team. There's something special about it. They're So fun to watch. They never give up. I don't think it's been a long time since they've been blown out. They're always in games. They play a team game, and I attribute a lot of that to their head coach, Dean Evison. He has the team firing on all cylinders almost every night. And better yet, he has this team believing. Here we are in March, and we are still in the thick of the playoff race. Dean Evison is a huge part of that. And I'm not just saying that because he was my all-time favorite hockey player growing up. Okay, I truly mean it. He has installed a system that works. A system that plays to his team's strengths. And everyone has bought into it. And I can't wait to see where things go from here. Very exciting. The last thing I will say is about the playoffs. Why not us? Someone on Blue Sky mentioned this today. He said, why not us? The St. Louis Blues shocked the hockey world several years back. I can't remember what the actual date was, like what year it was, but they were in last place in like January, I think. And they rallied. Like, okay, when I say last place, I mean like last place in the league. And they rallied. They made a run. And they ended up winning the Stanley Cup. Nobody expected that to happen. Nobody predicted that. Well, right now, nobody expects the Jackets to win the Cup. I mean, heck, nobody expected the Jackets to even be sniffing a playoff spot at this point in the season. And yet, here we are. So why not us? Why not us to shock the world? Is it improbable? Absolutely. But it is not impossible. Looking at the standings currently, they sit only 4 points behind the Hurricanes and Devils, who are tied for second in the division. Game in hand on Carolina, by the way. So they are within striking distance. Imagine that. Imagine not only a playoff spot, but, qualifying as a wild card. But, sorry, my phone's going off there. But having home ice advantage in the playoffs, in the first round. A guy can dream, right? Sure is unlikely. But at this point, you have to at least embrace it as a possibility. And who would have thought that at the start of the season? That the Jackets not only have a chance to make the playoffs, but have a chance, albeit a long shot, to have home ice advantage in the first round. That's crazy. Crazy to think about. I read a story recently that the Jackets, the season the Jackets are having is like the best, most feel-good, most inspiring story in hockey this year. Maybe even of any sport. With the Gaudreau tragedy, there are lots of fans out there who are rooting for the Jackets to succeed. I've read a lot of posts and stuff about how others are adopting them as kind of like their second favorite team. This is an example, right? I was packing up the car yesterday before leaving for the Stadium Series game, and a car stopped by my house, just pulled over. He saw me in my Jackets jersey, and the guy told me he was a Blues fan, St. Louis Blues fan, but the Jackets were his second favorite team, and he is cheering for them this season. He wants them to have a good season. I think there's a lot of that this year. If you made a list of all the NHL teams and ranked them as to the number of fans of other teams that hate them, I believe the Jackets would be at the very bottom. I believe that not many people out there hate the Blue Jackets. I mean, let's face it, they have never been good enough, really, to tick people off. I mean, they have never lurked at the top of the standings for years, preventing, other teams from qualifying for the playoffs. It's not like they're stopping other teams from making it and making people angry. Like, those darn Blue Jackets keeping my team out. You don't hear that. You've never heard that. And they don't have players like Brad Marchand that seem to rub people the wrong way. They're just a hodgepodge of, good guys and up-and-comers. They're just a fun team that is hard to dislike. They're hard to dislike. So there's a lot of support for them this year. If the Jackets do qualify for the playoffs, I think we'll see a lot of casual fans jump on board, and a lot of fans who support other teams, especially those that have already been eliminated, they'll decide to cheer for the Jackets. This team will have a lot of support from not just their loyal fan base if they can make it to the playoffs. And with that, I will sign off for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Feel free, get in touch with me, questions, suggestions, comments, co-host requests, and just, general CBJ talk. I'm here. You can find me on Instagram or Blue Sky at Whaler Jacket. I would be very happy, very glad to interact with you and talk hockey. So, communicate with me. Send me a message. I appreciate you spending time with me on Boom and Gloom today. Until next time, take care and go Jackets.